There it is. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Gold Mine. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. I am very excited. We got Jeremiah Wilbur here. I've been looking forward to having a conversation with you for quite some time, so this is going to be awesome. Sean is joining us from somebody's backyard. There was a power outage in his town, so he's joining us from out in the mountains. This is going to be a good one. Now, while we're giggling, y'all should be doing something too. Hit the buttons, like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bells, do all that good stuff. Get your emails whenever we go live, which of course Wednesdays for the Gold Mine and the Collective on Fridays. Before we jump right into, let's get to intro here. Jeremiah, 10 to 15 seconds. Who are you? Where you come from? All that good stuff.
Yes. My name is Jeremiah Wilbur. I live in Kiowa, Colorado. I served 22 years in the Army, about half of that in Special Forces and 3rd Special Forces Group. I served as an 18 Echo and 3rd Special Forces Group, and I served as 18 Zulu and 10th Special Forces Group. Been retired for about 4 years now and just chasing adventures, living life, and trying to push those passions onto others.
Love it. Love it. Sean, how's life out in the mountains?
A little bit of a power outage, just been driving around trying to find high ground that gives me a data signal. So I'm in some random backyard right now, just because that's the way I like to roll.
You gotta push through it. Gotta do what you can, right? John Minori's in here. Morning. Good to see you, buddy. We're gonna get right into the videos here. We're going to be talking about the art of life, and I am excited about this one. So we're going to hit this up first, and then we get your thoughts, and then we're going to go from there.
Through his desk, and I found this poem, and I read the poem over, and I went, man, that's how my dad lived his life. The poem goes like this. The master in the art of living draws no distinction between his work and his play, his labor and his leisure, his mind and his body, his education and his recreation, his love and his religion. He hardly knows which is which. He simply pursues his vision of excellence through whatever he is doing and leaves it up to others to decide whether he is working or playing. To himself, he's always doing both.
Bam. Let's get you guys' thoughts on that. Jeremiah, I'm going to hit you first. What do you think?
I feel like this poem is my life in a nutshell. From the time I was a kid, I knew I was going to be a soldier. I knew I was going to be in the Army. And I always want to be surrounded by the best. I always want to be surrounded by people that are better than me. I think that's how you better yourself. And that's why I went to Special Forces. Looking at retirement, everything I do is, cowboying and having fun and want to be out on a horse. So yeah, whether I'm working or I'm playing, I feel like there's hardly a difference in any of those. And I've definitely been blessed to be able to live a life like that and not have that, what am I doing? Am I at work right now? And there's those days where I'm like, man, I can't believe this is actually work. I'm getting paid to do this. And at the same time, I'm doing all that, I am very strong in faith. So, Jesus is always with you. So for me, it's like, well, no matter what I'm doing, what my job would be, it just so happens to be that my calling and what I'm supposed to do is to be a warrior and to be out in nature and just feel that, and just, I love that grit and that nostalgia and everything that kind of comes with that.
I like this. John, thoughts on this?
Yeah, I do. And I'm very much like Jeremiah myself. I'm very much aligned with what he just said. I'm very much in alignment with what the video just said. I think that, at my age now, near 61, I have the luxury of being semi-retired. So I have more liberty to choose the things that are work or play for me. And as it turns out, I've just happened to align the two. Even in semi-retirement, I'm still looking for work and play to be the same thing. It's where I do my best play is when it's work and play.
I like this because I really struggled for a long time with the concept of work and play, and it took me a while to kind of grasp the separation of the two and the connection of the two. It's very like yin yang kind of thing, in that you have to work to a degree, to a difficulty level that you can find the play structure in it, I believe. And did you guys struggle with it at all initially at like growing up? Did you have a difficulty separating the two, Jeremiah?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I feel like, even if I can remember doing really, crappy work, whether it's like digging ditches or hauling lumber or whatever, even now, working as a guide for an outfitter, cutting trees down, falling trees, and just real hard manual work. I feel like it always turns into a game. You're the way you're tossing the logs to your buddy, or the way you're, how much wood can you carry versus how much wood I can carry. And I think that like my whole life has kind of been that way, and instead of looking at tasks and being very disappointed by them, just trying to, okay, it has to happen. And I think a lot of that was being raised by parents that were, that had a standard, held a high work ethic. And also my dad was really big on, if your name's on it, like it's you need to do a good job. You always leave something better than you found it. And if somebody hires you or somebody has you do a job, your name is on it. So that's part of your reputation. So I think that, allows me to have that sense of responsibility, but I always look at it. And even now, like as, almost 45-year-old man, I mean, I'm still make things a game, having fun while it's kind of in a suffering fest, or things that other people might think are kind of crappy conditions, whether it's the weather that's providing that or just the actual physical labor. So I feel like play and work have always kind of been hand in hand for me.
It's a great mentality to teach a kid, right? The that work ethic and be able to play at the same time. Shaun, any thoughts?
I do. And Chance, how many times have I said it on podcasts or to you and I when we're speaking privately in the green room, etc.? The game within the game. We've got to play the game within the game. There's a game all around us. We're always playing the game. We get to choose how we play that game, the game of life. But within the game of life, we've got all these little missions and subroutines and side quests and major tasks and all of the stuff that encompasses life. I like to take whatever I'm doing at the moment and play a game within that game so that I can amuse myself, so I can entertain myself, so I can appreciate it, so that I can learn more about the thing that I'm doing at the time at a deeper level by considering how to play a game within the game that I have directly in front of my nose at that time. So I'm always looking for ways, like Jeremiah. So he said it simply, but I think it's so powerful when you read between his lines, and that is, if you've got to stack wood, who can stack it the tallest? Who can stack it the fastest? Who can carry the most wood to the stack? And so there's always a game within the game of life, and it's our job, I believe, to try to find it, that game within the game, in order to enrich our lives.
Yeah, I really like this. I'm digging where this is going now. I got a more of a specific question in terms of. I'm going to go right back to you here, Jeremiah. In that, what is the game to you? I want to know how you vision the game of perhaps life or perhaps whatever. What do you think?
I never really use that term, the game, or the game of life. So I would kind of be a little bit pressed to see like where that's coming from. The way I would kind of interpret, like, what is the game? I look at life as being like, I don't want to use the word game of life, because I look at it completely opposite of like, life is so precious. And, a saying that I grew up with my mother, because she's Indian, was like, today's a good day to die. And I say that often to people. And it was something that my family always said, just like I love you. And what it meant was like, I'm right with the creator. I'm right with my family. I'm right with people, with everyone. I'm coming in a good way. I'm not carrying around all this weight and have all these anger or feelings or issues going on. I'm right with who I need to be right with. So if I die today, then that's totally fine. Like, okay. So I kind of look at it that way. And so the life that gives like the seriousness to life. But when I perceive like, what is the game that I'm doing? I just look at it as like just trying to really have fun in everything that's involved, because oftentimes in life, especially, when you're an adult, roles and responsibilities change. You have to be the provider. You have to take care of yourself. There's a lot of things that completely change away from always having fun, but are mandatory tasks that you need to execute. If you don't execute them, you're not going to be a functioning, human in society. So I look at, like, I always just try to make things fun. Like, we have to do it anyway. I have to do it anyway. Now, I'm not saying that like sitting down paying a bill or whatever, I can make that fun, or a game, but there are little mental tweaks that you can do. And I think the only thing I can really think of is like that manual labor type intensive stuff that I've always just tried to have some fun with, and to also kind of spread that around to others, like, as we're working. It's got to get done no matter what. So we can sit here and complain about it, or we can just at least try to have fun, and or whatever it is, even if the fun is just talking and getting to know each other, the people you're working with, or the people you're around.
Yeah, I really like that. Shaun, any thoughts on this?
Sure do. So the game of life, as I describe it, is game board, Monopoly, or poker, or roulette, or dice. It doesn't much matter what the game is. The game comes with a set of rules. There's a rule set. There are win conditions. There are loss conditions. There is a framework that the more you play it, the better you understand the rule set. The more you play it, the better you understand how to bend the rules. And so for me, the game within the game of life, has a fixed construct to some degree. By playing with the rules of life, bending them, shifting them, molding them so that they work better for you, as opposed to the person set and shaping and bending and molding it so that it works for them. Therefore, their rule set looks a tiny bit different than my rule set on how we unfold our lives. That's what I consider when I say game of life. I use the term construct, but it could be how you live your life in a framework of rules, win conditions, loss conditions. So within that framework, it's my job to learn how to do it better. So using the example of the Matrix, Neo, he's in the game, he's in the rule set, he's in the construct. It's his job to learn how to play the game better by understanding how to shape gravity, how to do all of these various things. And so I look at the world that we're around right now. I can see a pine cone off to my left. It's been in my peripheral for a while. I want to pick that pine cone up and see how far I can throw it. Then I'm going to retrieve it, bring it back here, and then try to use a spin on it, or a tumble on it, or an arc on it, or something where I try to game within my game. So that's my reference to playing the game within the game.
I really love they're two distinct interpretations of the game itself, of life in general, and I think they both lead to a very similar outcome, in the fact that, like, you guys seek to enjoy the little moments, the things right now, rather than trying to get something later, or there's future casting involved and stuff like that. So I love where this is going. Now I have another video here that we're going to get into, and unless you guys have got any other further thoughts on that.
Just one more piece. I should have qualified it, and it's a bit unfair to Jeremiah in the sense of, when I say the game, I don't mean like I'm not serious. I don't mean like I'm a joker, and I don't mean like I don't take life for what it is. Every second that I get is a joy, or is a pleasure, or is a moment to cherish. I do, but if someone can think up a better word than game, which means serious, understand win conditions, rule sets, and loss conditions seriously, I'll use that term. But for now, game is a serious game for me, for sure.
Any additional thoughts on that, Jeremiah, at all?
Oh no! As soon as he described it, I was like, oh, I totally get what he means now. And that's what I was saying, was like, I'm not quite sure the concept of the word game. So for me, when I take the word game, I'm like, like I said, I was thinking of like checkers or something. Like, I don't know how to make it
Yeah.
to that way. But the way he explained it, especially with the rules, I really like that. I feel like there's a lot of things you can apply to that, whether it's biblical, the Ten Commandments or other things. There's a lot of these constructs and things that you apply to your life, and you see those rules, whether they're God's rules or man's rule, of not driving over the speed limit or whatever. So I really like the way you described that.
That brings a very interesting thought to mind in terms of the rule sets, and we were talking a little bit earlier before Shaun jumped on, and we were sitting in the green room. But we were talking about the fact that some people have certain rule sets in their heads, and they don't align with our rule sets in our heads. And I'm wondering, perhaps, as a nice little segue on this, managing those disparities when you are engaging with other people who are playing the different rule set, basically, and how you manage through that, or how do you turn that into a benefit game itself? I'm going to come right back to you, Jeremiah. What do you think?
Ooh, again, I kind of think of where that conversation is like a morality issue would be probably my biggest thing, trying to understand that, and meaning like, if you have different viewpoints on who you are as a man, and what a good person in life looks like or whatever, whether that's non-religious or it's religious or whatever, I feel like that's probably where a lot of that comes from. And at the end of the day, I feel like, if you believe in something, you've got to stick up for it. You've got to be the voice of it if you really believe in something. And that doesn't mean you need to be the loudest voice. It doesn't mean, the crazy stuff we're seeing sometimes. But what it means is, if you disagree with something that's going on in society, then you've got to stick up. And if it's something moral, especially, on religious boundaries, for me, like as a Christian, I try to make it like, like I have a horrible mouth, and I try to like, I ask God every day, like, help me out today, bro. Like I ain't got it together. So it's like, at that same time, there's a lot of things that I feel like we as Christians just allow to happen, whether it's in our school district, with our children, on TV, whatever. So it's like, if we just sit there and allow it, then it's going to continue to happen. So at some point, you do have to draw that line in the sand and be like, I'm going to represent who I represent, who my family is, the God I fear, and what it means to me. So I think regardless of the way you stand, whether that's someone who's aligned like I am as Christian, whether you're Muslim, whether you are, you're an atheist and you believe whatever, like those are things you need to be able to stand on have that moral compass, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. Got to stand for what you believe in. Shaun, you got thoughts on this?
I do. What I was picturing is a large conference area, a large conference room, and in it there was Lucia. There's a bunch of tables, and everyone's playing poker. I'm the new guy there, and who I'm going to play the game with. And as I look at that table, I've got to decide: do I like this table? So submissiveness, or we're not going to agree, or we're not. No problem. You get up from the poker table and you walk to the next poker table. I'm in the game of trying to improve my poker game, not for better wisdom. I'm always seeking to get better at. It's my job to seek more, not to seek less. So it can't resolve it. I'm looking to move on. That's my simplest answer.
Yeah, that works. Okay, with that in mind, I'm going to put up this next video, and then we're going to engage this one as well. Here we go.
Not be humble if you do not know your power. If you do not know your power, you're not humble, you're just afraid. You're not humble, you're just compliant. The only person that can be truly humble is the person that knows their strength and knows their power, then chooses it to serve, chooses to empower, not overpower. I believe kindness is one of the highest values that I know that I have in my life. When you have strength and you're kind, that's where it perplexes the world.
Bam. Shaun, I'm going to come to you with first on this one. What are your thoughts?
I like it. I think the video is legit. The message it sends, or the spirit of the message, is solid, and I align with that. I think the trick is in today's modern society, no matter how well you understand that message, there's still a dissonance, or there's still a disconnect between understanding that to be true and what society feels a man should be. So, I think the modern image of what a man should be is a bit archaic. It's all about spears and shields and beating someone over the head, and not really having much empathy or having much consideration for your fellow man. In essence, the louder you yell, the more powerful you are, as Jeremiah was perhaps saying earlier. I think that the message is on point. I'm not sure that the message syncs up with modern masculinity right now.
That's an interesting realm to go down. Jeremiah, any thoughts on this?
I agree, and I kind of disagree in some of the things that Shaun said, and meaning, and I'll kind of give you this perspective. So, and this was a few days ago. I was out in the mountains on a horse, leading, guiding a pack trip, and something I thought about was like everyone that I like to be around, and every person that I consider my friend, and from my wife to my best friends, people I spend most of the time with, and people I want to learn from and be around, all have this common thing, and it's imposter syndrome. And what it is, it really boils down to like this ultimate humbleness. It's like these true professionals, these cowboys that have been doing it their entire life. When I served in the teams, and I was surrounded by the most amazing warriors the planet's ever seen, and these guys are constantly like none of us can believe we're all here. We always compare ourselves to the other guy who's better than us, and we think he's better, and we just kind of have this imposter syndrome, this really weird humbleness. At the same time, those same professionals, those same people also conduct themselves with a little bit of swagger, a little bit of cocky. Like they have that because they are true professionals and they're that good at what they do. And so I think that there's when I say I disagree just a little bit with Shaun, is I do think that the loudest voices tend to be those guys who don't have imposter syndrome. They are the whatever the industry, I'm going to stay kind of in the veteran realm. Those are the Navy SEALs, the Green Berets, the Army Rangers that that still feel they have stuff to prove. And what they want to do is they want to put on their armor and show how awesome they are, and I'm this and I'm this. What a modern man is. I'm an alpha male. If you have to tell yourself you're an alpha male, you're not an alpha male. So, and real men are able to do that. And they also, another thing I think what real masculinity is, modern masculinity would be that with that cocky swagger, right on the border of that humbleness with that imposter syndrome. And at the same time, you're not singular. Most of those people that you're describing, Shaun, are very singular individuals. And I don't think that that's the real measure of a man, and guys who have served in capacity for others. I think real fathers, real warriors, real people have always served, from their family and built out of that and out to their community. So I think like that's just the loudest voice right now when we talk about what's masculine in today's modern age. But I do feel there's a lot of empathy and sympathy and all these other emotions that go through these guys. And the commonality I've found out through all of them is they all don't know just how awesome they are, but they kind of do at the same time, if I'm making sense there.
Yeah, it's a really interesting duality when you get to know people that are probably the most dangerous people you could imagine. You see this in the martial arts world a lot too, right? The super high level black belts and the people who could end you in a flat second are the calmest, most relaxed, chillest people. They know they don't want to get into it, but if anything does happen, then it's game on. it's done. Shaun, you got any thoughts on that?
Well, Jeremiah, I think that you probably don't understand how much we are in total agreement on what you just said. In fact, we've done several podcasts that talk about, or I talk about, I've got 110% imposter syndrome, just an extra 10%. Because I'm that much extra imposter. And just recently we did a podcast talking about the careful line between being confident and cocky. and somehow figuring out what your swagger is, but not too much swagger, and definitely not so much that it interferes with your 110% imposter syndrome. And so I fully agree with what you said. I couldn't align with it anymore. However, I will state this, that I do feel there are two camps right now, and it doesn't matter which camp is bigger than the other camp. Camp shake your fist at the clouds and be an alpha male, or camp be humble but kick ass quietly. Between those two camps, I don't know which one is bigger, but I know that this camp over here that's yelling a lot isn't that small. And so I hope it gets smaller over time, simply based on this camp just being freaking righteous. So we'll see how that all plays out.
Yeah,
I couldn't agree more.
yeah. It's a distinct challenge, especially when you consider, and Shaun and I have talked about this before too, is that, you know, JTF2 is really secretive for a reason.
Mhm.
But by being secretive, nobody knows about it. So there's no like, oh, I wonder what that is. There's just no one knows. SAS were the same way for a long period of time, right? No one knew who they were, and they just were kicking ass in the quiet. And then all of a sudden, it's like, oh my man, like, who are these people? And I think this is a interesting lane to go down in terms of not so much ever finding the line, I guess, is the key. Do you think perhaps the real trick of this, the art of it, is to continually seek the line between humility and swagger and just keep trying to refine it? What do you think, Jeremiah?
I kind of relate this. I guess my analogy for that exact example, that fine line, you know, where does that come from? Humility and swagger is I am blessed and with being able to ride horses and have horses in my life, and really work through like a different partnership, a different kind of teammate, a different kind of trust level. So what I was kind of like trying to go with that to relate it to the horse and what that gives me is, you know, you do have to have this balance. And because, you know, the how much of your emotions the horses can feel, whether you're scared, whether you're mad, all those things, you have to come into this with a lot of balance. And I think that's why horses are such great, you know, whether it's, you know, therapy, a working tool, you know, for guys on a ranch. And it is just kind of brings you back. And the one thing I've always seen is it's a lifelong journey to be a really good horseman. And I think that if you look at the lifelong journey that a really good horseman has, and if you talk to somebody like my grandfather or like my uncles, you know, that are in, you know, talk to my uncle now that's almost 80. I mean, he still doesn't think of himself as like this amazing horseman, because it's a lifelong journey for him, and he's still constantly learning. Every day he's still learning something. At 80 years old, putting his leg over a horse almost every single day of his life since he was a kid. And I think if you view life in that way, whatever your profession is, whatever your passions are, just, and it doesn't have to be any of that. It's just being open to always learning, always soaking things in, and always be willing to that, you know, to also realize like the person I was when I was 30, I'm not the same person when I'm 40. And I've learned all these things and I've soaked all this in. And my journey of life is this constant pursuit of knowledge, and to also knowledge, but also kind of push that knowledge out, to not be singular, to try to, like, you know, impart some of those things on others. But I think the moment you get over that cocky side is when you think you've kind of made it. You think you've done it all. Those are the guys you see that a lot, you know, in fighting is one of those things where it's hard to judge that guy's just trying to sell the fight, or is he actually really that cocky. And I think that's sometimes why, as fans, you know, you like getting to see that cocky guy get knocked out versus the guy who comes in a little more humble and just wants to let his skill set do the speaking for him. So I think there is that balance, you know, and you hit it too with like JTF2 and recruiting for special operations and everything. Like you do have to have this balance of where that goes, and I think it teeters. It's so fine. It's really, really hard to do, really, really hard to balance. And sorry, I'm talking forever. And the one thing I will add to that, I think you almost have to you can't be singular. You do need to care about others to a point, but you also need to like understand that you're in control, and that what others think about you or their perceptions of you, if you are coming in the right way and you're walking down the right path, then so be it. It is what it is. You cannot worry about the way people feel about you in that way. So that lifelong journey, without worried about what the perception is of you, why you're following your path.
100% agree with that. That's fantastic. Shaun, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I love that. There's a ton of good points in there. I can't even dig into them just because it kind of stands on its own body of work. I'll say this, that using the horse as an example, what we're talking about is a feedback loop or a feedback tool. And, I grew up on horses as a kid in the mountains. First bone I ever broke my leg was on a bareback horse doing things that I shouldn't have been doing. And so, the horse is a great feedback loop. And it's our job to understand that that's what we should be seeking in life. If you're not sensitive to the world around you, you have to find things that will make you sensitive to the world around you. If you're not good around horses, maybe you're better around humans. And so how do you get a good feedback loop with humans? Well, there's tons of different ways you can do it. You can do it on the BJJ mats, an amazing feedback loop. You can go to a book club once a month and sit down with people that you don't know and just kind of commune with strangers, for lack of a better term, and use that as a feedback loop. Feedback loops are all around us. We should be trying to touch them as much as possible to not so much understand who we are to others in the world, but who we are to ourselves in the world. Because as Jeremiah said, and I do believe this to be true, and it takes a long time to learn this. In fact, it took me decades to learn. Man, just do you. Like, don't be a goof. Try to be righteous. Try to do it the right way, not the wrong way, but just do it your way. And if you're doing it in a cool way, who cares what people think? Well, I mean, that sounds a bit callous. I do care to some degree because I want them to try to live a style of life or parts of my life that I think are positive focused. And so I can't just do me and flip the bird to the world. So you got to do it right. You got to do it cool, but you got to do it for you. And while you're doing it for you, as it turns out, it tends to spread. And if you're doing good things, the people around you experience good things. And so as Jeremiah said again, and not digging into it too deep, you start where your feet are, you build it out in your family, you build it out in your community, you build it out in your country, you build it out in the world.
Absolutely.
This is fantastic. You got any other thoughts, Jeremiah, on that?
No, that was awesome.
Yeah. He has these mic drop moments. He used to, in his old, in the studio, he used to have this swish, little mic swish that he stopped doing because I made fun of him once.
Stop.
Yeah, there we go. So this is a great line of thinking, and I really want to kind of follow this as to where it goes. Is I think a lot of people out there struggle finding that line. And not only finding that line, knowing where to even begin, knowing how to start, knowing what to do next. And I know a lot of veterans struggled. I've used equine therapy myself. It was fantastic. I can't say enough about it. But in terms of seeking feedback loops, what would you guys suggest? Where would you send random Joe, who's going to be listening to this later, one of the collective? Where would you send them first? What would be your first go-to, Jeremiah?
So mine is more of a, I guess, like a spiritual feedback loop. Because for me, what I always tell guys to do, and I mean, sometimes my wife will even be like, you need to hit the mountains, dude, or you need to go do something. And this is what I do to stay grounded, to not carry around all these burdens with me or feelings that I have. So especially with the veteran community, when you're on missions and things happen to you, a lot of people talk about, the trauma in this, and it's like, there's been times I couldn't even process what happened to me, to my friends, to people around me. And you get to the point where like it affects everything in life. Both my parents died really young. And like processing that my parents are gone, like my kids don't have grandparents, and it's like, if you don't unpack these things, you just carry them around in your rucksack. Your rucksack just gets heavier and heavier and heavier. But that's kind of the mentality, and it's the worst in special operations, because you just go, go, go. The average operator is deployed, 280 days a year. I mean, you're in these small brackets where you need to be a real human. A week at a time, you go see your folks, you come back, you're back on ops, you're back training, you're back whatever. So I think a lot of people can understand this in life because they're just the hustle and bustle. You work a Monday through Friday job, you're making somebody else rich. You're just trying to get it done in the cubicle so you can go, take your kid to jujitsu and then, maybe go camping or maybe go fishing or just have something you can do with your kids or with your family or pay the bills, right? So what I always tell people to do is you can't carry all that around in your rucksack, man. You can't do it. And what I do is I get into nature. So the first thing I tell people is go to the mountains if you can, or whatever is closest to you. That's nature. If you live in New York City and it's Central Park, it's Central Park. And, first thing you do is take your shoes off, lay in the grass, lay on the ground, go buy some water, go buy something, lay down, connect with that energy, connect with the creator and talk to him. You don't have to tell anybody else your problems. You don't have to go to therapy. You don't have to do any of these things. If you physically give it to the creator, tell him the story, what happened, hash it out with him. You're just talking with yourself, cry it out yourself, do your thing on your own. And as men, I think it's important that you understand that because you need to have that relationship with somebody else that's bigger than you, that's better than you. And it doesn't have to be one of your buddies. When guys get around, I don't want to get around and talk about emotions and crying each other. I want to go hunt. I want to go fish. I want to do cool stuff. I don't need to hear you unpacking everything. And with that, so back to I'm on the side of a creek, laying barefooted on the grass, because I'm native, tobacco is big. So it's like a physical representation of giving something to the creator. So what I'll do is I'll unpack all that. I'll talk to him about it and I'll leave some tobacco. I'll tie some tobacco to a tree or something to be that physical representation of what I'm dealing with. I'm leaving it here in nature for the creator. He carries that burden for me. He does everything for me. And it's just a connection to the earth, where we come from. You remove all these right angles in your life, buildings and the hustle and bustle, and you can just slow things down for just a second and spend 5 minutes or 5 days, whatever it is, doing that and grounding yourself. So I always say nature, go to nature, go talk to Jesus about it. Don't carry it around. Let him know what's going on. And I guarantee you're going to walk out of there a different person.
Yeah. I really love using nature as it's almost it's a meeting point, right? To be able to kind of connect and reconnect. And I think that we definitely spend a lot, perhaps maybe too much of our lives in the construct, you know what I mean? Versus just going out and being with what is. And, being able to work with horses, being able to be in nature, being able to see nature, and like you said, hunting or fishing or any sort of thing that resets the rest of the world.
It's the ultimate reset. And because you're never going to get away from that hustle and bustle of the city or life or what's going on. And obviously we have responsibilities and roles we need to fill. But if you can press pause, for a second on everything else that's going on and give yourself that reset. And if it needs to happen, a few times a week or every day, you just get outside or whatever it is, it really changes your perspective because you're removing everything that's man-made around you to the best of your ability. And I guarantee you, it just gives you a deeper connection to what life really means and allows me to think, it really gives you a lot of mental clarity when you remove all those things that are man-made that are around you.
It's amazing how much like buffer there is when it comes to man-made stuff. It just seems like there is a massive almost a haze in terms of your life just in the way. But that is it's a fantastic point. I don't know what happened to Shaun. He disappeared here, so we're gonna carry on without him.
No worries.
It's not a big deal. I got one more video here that we're gonna jump right into, and then we'll discuss it for a little bit and go from there. So this is again exactly right where we are. So
An interesting question in philosophy. The interesting question is, what does it mean to live a finite, fragile life in an infinite, eternal universe? Paradoxically, whilst we are definitely physically insignificant, the Earth is one planet around one star amongst 400 billion stars in one galaxy amongst 2 trillion galaxies in a small patch of the universe, right? So we're definitely small. If you think about what we are, we're just collections of atoms. And we're this pattern that can think. You have a means by which the universe understands and explores itself, which is us. That you can have a few things that were cooked in the hearts of stars, you stick them together in a pattern, and suddenly it has some ideas and starts writing music. That's quite difficult to comprehend, right? Well, that happened here. And so the question then becomes, well, on how many other worlds did that happen? And that's where I think the value can come in, because there aren't any other worlds where this happened, certainly in our galaxy. So it could be this planet, notwithstanding its physical insignificance, is the only place where anything thinks for millions of light years in every direction. And suddenly, therefore, you end up considering this planet as being the most valuable place in the local universe.
Bam. Thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, growing up a Christian, but also Indian with like a perspective of that, I find it weird, people start talking about the universe and how big it is or whatever, because I'm like, well, you can't see it. Who knows what's fake anymore? Who knows what's real? You're telling me you did some math problems to tell me that this star is this far away. Like, I don't believe you, bro. Like, you can't even tell me how HF radios work. So I'm a little skeptical on some of that, but I think what he's saying does make a lot of sense, because it's, if you look at it, it's like this is how tiny you are. You when the grand scheme of things, you're insignificant like an ant is. And, but at the same time, when you come down to it at the ground level, that one ant, is a facilitator for so many things and the powerhouse of his family or doing this. So it's like, you can look at, your proximity to things. If you want, you can zoom in and out. And I think that that's something that happens too often in society, especially when you look at politics and the way we treat each other and the internet and all of these things come on it. It's easier to pull back and look at things from like a 10,000 foot view and look at people. So when you say like one woman died today, or this happened in this city, or this shooting or whatever, it's so significant to us because we don't know that person. We don't understand them. But if you were on the ground level and you knew that person that happened to your family or that was there, then it's 10 times different. So I think it's important to understand like how big, when he was talking about the galaxy all the way down to somebody writing a song and getting inspiration from something, to really realizing that like, hey, it's okay to kind of, like, you can't go through life with this perspective of this view of how big we are and being insignificant without being understanding like how valuable you are and valuable that is at the ground level. And in today's hustle and bustle with our technology and what we have at our fingertips, I think we've all kind of lived this life where we're looking at it from outer space, if you will, in kind of his analogy.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Shaun, are you with us?
I am. I hope you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you back. Huzzah.
Okay, good. I didn't see the video. I'm assuming there was a video there. So the one thing that I would say, based on what Jeremiah just mentioned, this zooming in and zooming out, I agree with that. We've got to do that on a regular basis each day. However, I think that one thing that has happened as a social phenomenon is this: someone will zoom in. Media, it doesn't much matter what it is, zoom into an isolated incident, a case, a woman who was killed as the example. And that moment, which is generally insignificant within the universe, though extremely significant to that person and their family and neighborhood and etc. But what will happen is it will be conflated or increased or magnified to such a degree where it is now yet another divisive moment about a person that we don't know, that in the grand scheme of things shouldn't be causing the kind of commotion that is being caused. And so we're in a weird world right now with social media doing what it does. And I think that more people could zoom out and not quite zoom in as much as they are, to be honest.
I like this idea of being able to play with the Zoom itself. I just like this idea. And I'm wondering perhaps if that might be the goal of life in general is to being able to find how to switch back and forth, basically, how to zoom out when you need to, how to zoom in when you need to, understanding when to do those things and then how. And I really love the idea of zooming in and out. Now, I'm wondering perhaps uh, when you were younger, when you look back on your life, did you have difficulty doing that at some point? And if so, how did you learn how to manage it? Jeremiah, I'll come right back to you.
I think like the best way for me to relate this and to kind of put this in perspective for myself or how my brain works is, you know, in on the battlefield, you have three levels. You have the operational level, you know, you have the tactical level, the operational level, and the strategic level. So being able to all really good units, especially, you know, special operations in particular, the guys that can really affect the battlefield can understand how they can navigate, manipulate, utilize all three of those levels at any given time. The teams that don't operate well don't understand how to affect things on the strategic level or stay at that tactical level, don't really get into the operational level. And I think a lot of that goes with maturity and understanding the overall mission, understanding what you're doing at the time and how you can affect everything. So I think as you grow, as you get older, that maturity and understanding how your actions affect others and the secondary tertiary effects of your actions couldn't just be, you know, at the lowest level. It might not just be in your home. You might be able to really affect things in a positive or a negative way. And now with social media in particular, now you have the ability where people at least have a platform at like a strategic level where they can address hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people if they want to, whether it's a funny video, whether it's an educational video, whether it's political, whatever. You have these people being able to navigate this in today's society. So I think like for me growing up, I look at it just maturity level, you know, like if you look at like a brand new team guys don't care about anything besides killing things. So they don't care about anything but the tactical level. And at the same time, like to be a good team guy, like they need to understand the tactical level really well, right? And as they grow and progress, they need to become that senior guy who understands all three levels and how to operate them, but can't forget what it's like to be the brand new guy carrying a machine gun and stuck at the tactical level. So I think like that was my analogy of how you, as like a good operator, is able to understand that as they go through their career. And I wouldn't expect younger people and younger generations to even really understand that concept of being able to kind of zoom in or zoom out or move between these different levels, because I think that takes a lot of experience in life and a lot of understanding of just how things you do affect other people. And I think that takes a long time to really comprehend and physically, like, tangibly feel that.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Shaun, thoughts on this?
Yeah, Jeremiah is correct in my opinion. It just takes time. It takes maturity. Wisdom is generally what we're talking about now, I think, and that just takes decades. And it's not decades of doing nothing. It's decades of doing a lot of things in order to understand the greater world around us. I think a very simple phrase that a lot of people can grasp and should hang on to for the rest of their lives, though it is extremely difficult to understand when you start off playing with this idea. Just focus on the things that you can control. Don't worry about the things you can't control. And so it's such a simple statement, but it's something that I continually refine over the decades, my understanding of it. And I think the trick is this, that we just don't know what we can't control. And the only way to understand that is to try to control it. And when you realize that you can't control these outcomes, that thing, death and life, all of that stuff, eventually you have to surrender to what you can control. But that takes time to learn. It's a simple phrase, but it's a complex phrase to latch on to for sure.
This is the trouble. There's lots of phrases, there's lots of allegories, there's lots of ways we can describe this or, you know, beat around the bush about it. But I think at the end of the day, it really comes down to experience. You got to get the reps in. You got to ride the horse. You got to get kicked off a bunch of times. You got to put your cinch strap on too loose one day. and then your saddle falls off, and you go, well, I'm not going to do that again. It's the overall experience of life to fail and then get up and carry on, at least in my mind. And I think perhaps this is my last question to you guys. I think that's how you live.
Sorry, Chance, if I can just interject real quick, because the example that you used, I don't really think fits into my model of control the things that you can control, don't focus on the things you can't, because that cinch is under your control, always was, always will be. And so what you're talking about is making a mistake on something that you have in your control right from the get-go. I'm talking about things that you can't control, like politics of another country as an example.
Mm. Yeah. And to your point, you're absolutely right. The concept I was thinking of is the fact that you still need to try to control it at least a little bit. You got to make that mistake once or twice before you go, oh, wait, no, that's outside of my realm. I'm not going to be able to push that far. And I'm wondering if just the experiences themselves, if seeking out those experiences of attempting to control something is perhaps how you live kind of a good life. If you're not continually seeking out experiences, I would say that's probably not a great place to go. Any thoughts on that before I give you this last question? Good to go? Okay. So initially, when we got this started, I was talking about the art of life and the fact that it is a creative process through which we live. And so I'm wondering, how do you define the art of life? How would you define what it is to live a life artfully? Let's go with that. Jeremiah, I'll go to you.
I don't know. I don't want to say anything that sounds weird or cliche in my description, but I almost kind of look at that of like, if someone read a book, your life story in a book, would they read it or would they put it down? Is it going to be entertained? Is it something that's going to motivate them? Are they going to enjoy reading this book? But without living life to write a book and for people to enjoy or people to think about, it's just, so I was very blessed. I'm definitely blessed still now being around a lot of old cowboys and hearing a lot of old stories and just that cool nostalgia of these rugged guys. But they're not living that life to tell those stories or for it to be written down and to be shared. That's just the life they've lived, and I think lives as warriors and soldiers and men in general, I think it goes back to kind of what we're saying, that work and play thing. If you're able to live a life that way, it will be a book that if someone wrote about your autobiography, wrote your biography, that people would want to read it. And it should be full of, mistakes and slip ups and sins and horrible things and crappy stuff you don't want in the book. But it's also going to be full of, highlights and smiles and laughter and it's just full of emotions. And I think if you're able to look at that from that perspective, then that's kind of how I would look at, my life in a nutshell. If I died today, I think, I wouldn't want, I want to be around my kids, but at the same time, I mean, I've had a blessed life and I didn't, some of it I was, went seeking and went on my own adventures and did these things. But at the same time, like I said, my analogy is a little weird. I don't want people to think I'm trying to live to write a book. I'm not a Navy SEAL, by the way. Otherwise, I would have a book already. But if that makes sense, I'm just saying, like, I think if you live that life we've been talking about it and work play balance and or adding the two together, and that first opening video I thought was so cool because he really described to me what the answer to your question. He was able to put it into words and make it very descriptive. And the only thing I can kind of add to that is, again, like, if you wrote a book, they wrote a book of your life, would it be cool? Would people want to read it?
That's awesome. I was tracking the whole way. That's a fantastic way to put it. Shaun, what do you think?
Yeah, would you read your own book is maybe another way of thinking about it, and like Jeremiah, when I was about your age, I was just living life like maximum effort, just chewing it up and swallowing it whole as best as I could. And right about that time, I started really focusing on Miyamoto Musashi, really diving into his philosophy, really thinking about life at a more philosophical level. And now at this age, I'm really kind of trying to not emulate or mimic or follow directly in the footsteps of Miyamoto Musashi. What I'm doing is I'm listening to, ancient wisdom from all genres, all cultures, all people, and trying to understand how to use this last phase of my life from 60 till 80 or whatever the case is. And so, like Miyamoto Musashi, he was a warrior that then turned into an artist. He started calligraphy, he started writing a book, of course, and etc. He became more of a cultured person through many exposures to various interests. And that's what I'm trying to do right now, is the art of life, whereas at one point it was more the art of war. And so I think you've kind of got to go through enough adversity in life in order to get towards the back end of life where you can look back on the book that you could have written and then rewrite it in a different way, in a more philosophical way, in a deeper, more meaningful way, not just for us, though maybe one day I'll read my own book, but for others to be able to pick up what we're putting down and hopefully learn through our mistakes, of which I can easily say I've got more than most. So art of life, I think, is a matter of trying to be an artist later in life.
I like it.
I'm digging it. I'm digging it a lot. I don't have anything to add on that. I think you guys nailed it exactly what I was thinking. So I'm loving this. We are just about an hour now, so we can kind of shut her down for the afternoon. I'm wondering, any final thoughts? Anything still bubbling on the back of your brain, or anything you want to get across before we shut her down, Jeremiah?
No, not really. I speaking of books, I try to make my life an open book. Going along with Shaun and some of the things he said. I look at one thing I try to do is like, how do we lead by an example, or how can we help other people to be the way we're in, the same headspace. And I'm not this way every day, like I have my ups and downs too, and brain trauma and all the other things that we all deal with. I mean, that's gonna spin you out of control and spiral you, right? So hopefully people took away some things that, like, when I feel like I'm spiraling or I feel like I'm doing something that they can grasp a hold of. But to like go along with what Shaun said, what I really, really like too, and I think a lot of this podcast, we did talk a little bit about masculinity and some young men in here. One of the things that I had growing up and I don't see any more of is, we called them OGs, like original gangsters. And those were like the cool uncles, the older guys in the neighborhood, the older dudes, they didn't dress like the young kid. They didn't dress like us. They didn't listen to our music. They didn't do any of that stuff. They would say, "Oh, you don't know nothing about this," and throw on an old Led Zeppelin song or showcase what they did. And they imparted their ways and their wisdom through the mistakes that they've made. And those those cool uncles, those OGs, those guys kind of went out of their way to try to impart a lot of wisdom on us, so we didn't make their same mistakes in life. And I think that nowadays there's just too many guys that are my age, from 40s and higher or whatever, that dress like the young kids, wear the young kids' clothes, do everything the young kids are doing to try to stay cool and relevant. You don't have to be cool. You're cool. Like, be that OG. That's what we need in our countries and in our families and in our culture and in our communities. Is we need those OGs. We need those men to stick up and to show what it was like to be that. The greatest generation, the generation World War II. Be your grandpa. Like, be those people, and it's okay. You don't need to listen to the young kids' music and try to fit in with them. Like, just impart your wisdom, and it's okay to be you. And I wish more guys would stop wearing skinny jeans and listen to stupid rap music and just be who they are. And I think that's kind of along the lines of Shaun. And looking at when he said art, I look at that too. It's like, yeah, that does make sense. Like, a lot of these guys might have led a life with a really tough blue collar, where their bodies jacked up, or maybe they were in trouble with the law or in a gang or something. And they don't ever push that on. They didn't push that on me when I was a kid. They wanted me to do better. And I think that that's what we need to do, is we want better for our youth and the people we're around. So don't be scared to share your mistakes and what you've jacked up in your life.
Love that. That's a fantastic message. Shaun, any final thoughts?
I 100% support that message for sure. The elders have so much to teach us, particularly in First Nations, Aboriginal, Indian, anyone who is connected to the earth, anyone who has been around in the game for thousands of years and has orally passed on traditions and messages. It seems that now, after all those thousands of years, all of that oral tradition, now somehow the oral tradition isn't getting passed on. It's actually being passed on by dudes in skinny jeans and freaking whatever the latest fashion trend is, where they're spouting trite, simplistic, barely worth the weight of the word that's being spit out knowledge that I feel is a real disservice to our community. So again, I'm going to support what Jeremiah just said, and that is seek wisdom from your elders.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love the idea of the OGs. I love the challenge I always had was when people that didn't know what they were talking about tried to sound like an OG kind of thing, right? And that's
Yeah.
that's the issue, is that when people start to try and be one of those guys without having the experience of it. So I guess I would only add on that is if you want to be like one of those guys, it means you got to live a hard life to get to that point where you can really be yourself. And I think that's absolutely key. I just want to say thank you very much, Jeremiah. This has been a great conversation. Shaun, love chatting with you as well. Sorry about the connection issues, but that is what it is. It's fantastic. I can't thank you guys enough. I'm going to shut her down with the way I always do, where we continue to learn, build, and grow. See y'all next week. Chimo.